On this journey, we're going to take a deep dive into how Len Bias joining the Boston Celtics would have changed the landscape of the NBA in the 1980s as well as in the 90s. Welcome back to Journey of a Ballaholic, the best talk show for basketball addicts. I'm your host, General Hannibal X. Now listen, if you're looking for passionate and in-depth analysis on the hottest NBA and college basketball topics, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And make sure you also tap that notification bell so that anytime I drop a new video, you'll get that update, which is every Monday and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, for those that don't know, Len Bias was one of the greatest college players to ever play the game. Before Maryland left the ACC, Len Bias was regarded as one of the top forwards to ever play in the conference with his combination of size, and skill, and athleticism. Bias was known for his amazing leaping ability and his otherworldly acrobatic finishing. Built like a tank, Bias led the Terps to the ACC Tournament Championship over the Duke Blue Devils and onto the NCAA Sweet 16 just as a sophomore. The next year, Lenny led the ACC in scoring with 19 points a game in his junior year. He also won the ACC Player of the Year and made the second team All-American. Now, those that coached him, and even those that coached against him, they all said that he played with a passion, with a hunger that was just rarely seen before him. But he was still such a raw talent, and when his senior season came around, that's when he took his game to a superstar level. Once again, he led the ACC in scoring that year with 23 points, also adding 7 rebounds and shooting 54%. Bias won the ACC Player of the Year and was named First Team All-ACC again. But this year, he wasn't going to be left off that First Team All-America. Bias proved that he was one of the top NBA prospects heading into the 1986 NBA Draft. Now, there was some that thought that Bias was going to be the next Michael Jordan. There were others that thought that Bias was already better than MJ. One thing's for sure, after his senior season, Len Bias had dominated the ACC on a level that even Jordan never did. However, MJ was 2 years ahead of Bias, and Michael had proved that in his NBA rookie season that his game had gone to another level that no one had ever seen before. MJ went on to average 28 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 6 assists, making the All-Star team just as a rookie. And the world became anxious to see if Len Bias was going to be able to dominate the NBA just as he had on the college level. But listen, before we go too far, let's take a trip back down memory lane for a second. Let's go back to June of 1984. The Seattle Supersonics had just traded their All-NBA point guard Gus Williams to the Washington Wizards. Now, after that trade and in need of a point guard, on October of '84, the Seattle Supersonics then traded a future first-round pick to Boston for Gerald Henderson, who had just won his second NBA title with the Celtics. Now, as it turns out, that future first-round pick that Boston received was for the 1986 NBA Draft. Now, let's skip to June of 1986 and remember, the Celtics had just beaten Hakeem and Ralph Sampson-led Houston Rockets in 6 games in the finals. And that 86 title would end up being the last of Larry Bird's 3 titles as he finished Game 6 of those finals with a 29-point triple-double. The Boston Celtics would use that draft pick they got from Seattle on Len Bias out of the University of Maryland. At 6'9", 210 pounds, the 2-time All-American would have been to Bird and the Celtics exactly what James Worthy was to Magic and the Lakers. So you gotta remember, after the Lakers won a title in '82, they turned around and drafted James Worthy the same exact summer. And the Celtics were looking to do the same thing after their '86 title. Just stop and think about that for a second. Just imagine a lineup of Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish, arguably the best front court in the NBA at that time, a backcourt of Dennis Johnson and Danny Ainge. Don't forget, they also had Bill Walton, who had just won the 6th Man of the Year the same season. Could you imagine that? Just imagine that Boston squad that had just won 67 games, the same Celtics team that had just beat Michael Jordan's Bulls in round 1, destroyed dominating Wilkes Hawks in round 2, swept the 57-win Bucks team that was led by 2-time Defensive Player of the Year Sidney Moncrief in the conference finals, and then beat the brakes off of Hakeem's Rockets in 6 games of the finals. Imagine that team, arguably one of the greatest teams of all time, adding Len frickin' Bias. I mean, that could have changed the entire history of the NBA. See, when the Lakers and the Celtics met in that 1987 finals, Boston didn't have the depth that the Lakers had. Bill Walton had just injured himself yet again, basically a shell of himself, forcing the Boston Celtics to play with only about 5 guys in the finals. Now, while the Lakers had their starting 5 of Magic, Worthy, Kareem, Scott, and AC Green, they also had Michael Cooper and Michael Thompson coming off the bench. So could you imagine the Celtics, who were in need of quality depth, adding a 6'9" athletic forward that could help contain Magic and Worthy, who were also both 6'9"? Now, would the Lakers have won that '87 finals if Boston had Bias? I don't know. But what I definitely know is it would have been a much better series. And though Bias would have probably started his career off coming off the bench, he would have seen significant minutes, which would allow Bird and McHale to be able to rest their ailing bodies. But what about the 88 finals? Even if the Celtics didn't win the title in 87, the experience that Bias would have gotten playing with the great Boston team, coming back in his second year, he would have been even better. Maybe Boston doesn't lose to Detroit in the 88 Eastern Conference Finals. I have to imagine that Bias would have been good enough to extend Bird and McHale's prime, likely pushing McHale to the bench as the sixth man, where he had already won 2 Sixth Man of the Year awards with the Celtics. The Pistons' 3 straight finals and back-to-back titles in 89 and 90, that may never have even happened. I think it's safe to say that Bias, if he had joined the Celtics in 86, Boston would have likely won 2 of the next 3 titles to end the 80s, which would have given Boston a total of 5 titles in the 80s, making them the best dynasty of their era and not the Lakers. But what about the 90s? That was the only decade that the Celtics didn't make the NBA Finals. Well, as we know, the 90s belonged to Jordan and the Bulls. But before we crown the Bulls, let's think back to 1990, the year before Chicago got over that Detroit hump. The Celtics traded away Danny Ainge with the emergence of Reggie Lewis, a shooting guard they had drafted just a year before. And despite Bird dealing with that bad back and McHale playing on a broken foot, with Robert Parrish still going strong, I think that adding a potential superstar like Len Bias to that core, not only were the Pistons in trouble of never winning a title, I believe that the 91 Bulls, they may not even have won their first title that year either. Despite Bird's decline, I think the core of Len Bias, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and Reggie Lewis, they may have won a couple of those early Chicago titles. Now, as great as MJ was, he would have eventually won a championship. But who knows how many titles Bias would have kept MJ from winning? And how will we look at Jordan when it comes to the GOAT conversation in comparison to Bias? Nothing is guaranteed in the game of basketball, but as we know, if you have a great organization with great coaching and supreme talent around you, you give yourself as good of a chance as any to win a championship each year. I think it's safe to say that had Len Bias joined the Boston Celtics in 1986, then not only would the 80s have been different, but I think the 90s and the way it played out would have been a totally different situation. I also think that the way we look at the GOAT conversation with Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird, I think that whole order could have been drastically different had Len Bias joined the Celtics. Stay tuned for the next episode of our What If series, and be sure to subscribe to the channel, tap that like button, and hit that notification so that you can stay updated with the journey of a Ballaholic.